Kojiro Sasaki wasn't known as a winner in life. In fact, people called him humanity's greatest loser. He spent his years losing matches against strong swordsmen, but that was actually how he grew. Every time he lost, he studied his opponent's moves, replayed them in his head, and found ways to win in theory. By the time of Ragnarok, he had built up an unmatched knowledge of swordsmanship, evolving beyond anyone else. Even after 400 years, he was still improving, and that's why Brunhilde picked him to represent humanity in the third round against Poseidon. Poseidon was no ordinary god. He was feared even by other deities and carried the title most fearsome of all gods. He wielded a massive trident with unbelievable speed, striking so fast that after images filled the arena. His personality was cold and cruel, believing gods needed no peers and no help. He fought with pure arrogance, confident that no human could ever stand against him. When the match began, his first attacks came at blinding speeds, and the crowd thought Kojiro wouldn't last a moment. Poseidon's techniques like Amphitrite and Medusa Alope Demeter created storms of thrusts that could overwhelm anyone, but Kojiro was not just reacting randomly. Using his ability Senju Muso, he predicted Poseidon's every movement by analyzing his breathing, muscles, and rhythm. Even before Poseidon attacked, Kojiro already knew where each strike would land. The fight escalated when Poseidon unleashed his most devastating barrages. It looked like hundreds of tridents were coming from every direction, but Kojiro had already trained for this moment in his mind. Each dodge and counter became sharper until he turned the tide. At one point, Poseidon's power was so overwhelming that Kojiro's sword broke, but thanks to Wrist, his Valkyrie partner, the weapon transformed into dual blades. With two swords, Kojiro combined all the techniques he learned across his life into one style. His final move, Soenzanko Banjin Ryoran, was a flurry of strikes blending his famous Tsubame Geishi and Torakiri together. The result was a massive X-shaped slash that cut through Poseidon's body completely, quartering the god in front of everyone. Buddha started as a human named Gautama Siddhartha, before reaching enlightenment and ascending to godhood. Unlike most gods in the tournament, he stood against the idea of wiping out humanity. He's laid back, cocky, and always sucking on a lollipop, but beneath that easygoing attitude, he's confident enough to say he could take on Zeus himself. Buddha's biggest ability is his future vision, which lets him read an opponent's soul and predict their next move. This, combined with his six-realm staff that transforms into different weapons depending on his emotions, made him one of the most dangerous fighters in Ragnarok. His opponent in round 6 was Zerofuku, the god of misfortune. Zerofuku used to be kind, trying to absorb human misfortune to make them happy. The problem was that taking away their misery only made people greedy and ungrateful, leaving him jealous when he saw Buddha spreading happiness effortlessly. Over centuries, his frustration twisted him into a tragic figure with a hole in his chest and an enormous weapon called the Misery Cleaver, made from his own flesh and bone. This axe kept changing forms and grew more destructive the more misery he absorbed. By the time he entered the fight, Zerofuku was unstable, throwing tantrums and fighting in blind rage. The clash between the two was intense from the start. Zerofuku swung his Misery Cleaver wildly, and it transformed into massive multi-headed axes and storms of countless blades. Buddha dodged everything with ease, his future vision allowing him to move before Zerofuku's strikes even landed. He countered with his six-realm staff, turning it into a club, sword, shield, and even a massive scythe. Each hit Buddha landed shook Zerofuku badly, but what stood out was how Buddha taunted him while also trying to help him find peace, telling Zerofuku to love himself. At one point, the fight came down to their fists, and Buddha knocked him out clean. Zerofuku regained his original kind self, finally finding some peace, but the battle wasn't over. Beelzebub had planted the seed of Hajun, the demon lord of the sixth heaven, inside Zerofuku long ago. After losing, Zerofuku's body was consumed, and Hajun was reborn. Hajun was far more terrifying, overwhelming Buddha with speed and power, even gouging out his eye and driving him close to death. This is where Zerofuku's final act mattered most. His soul, along with the 7 lucky gods, merged with Buddha in a Volunar, transforming into the great Nirvana sword, Zero, a divine weapon only someone enlightened could wield. With this sword, Buddha turned the tables. In the final clash, he unleashed Mahaparinirvana, a massive slash that cut Hajun apart, ending the threat for good. Joseph Joestar starts as an 18-year-old hothead with a sharp mind and a talent for ripple. He's loud, cocky, and always ready to troll his enemies by calling their next line. Under Lisa's brutal training, he turns that raw talent into real skill, mixing sleight-of-hand tricks with ripple-charged gear like clackers, wool thread, and even a sledgehammer. He fights the Pillar Men one by one, avenges Caesar, and shows honor to Wammu, but the wall he has to climb is Kars, the genius leader who wants the red stone of Aja to surpass all life. When Kars cheats Lisa and gets blasted with UV lights, the energy triggers his stone mask with the Super Aja. In a flash, Kars Cars evolves into the ultimate life form, a near untouchable foe with ripple, regeneration, and answers for every attack. Their clash turns into a pure survival match. Joseph bolts with the Super Aja, steals a German plane, and lures Cars toward a volcano, planning to drop both of them into the magma. Joseph actually crashes the plane with Cars on board, and for a second it looks like a checkmate. Cars adapts again, hardening his body into a heat-proof shell and digging out through the lava like it's soft dirt. He slices off Joseph's arm and moves in for the kill. Even then, Joseph keeps thinking. When Cars fires a ripple blast, Joseph instinctively raises the Super Aja, which bends and redirects that burst into the earth. The stone amplifies the energy and triggers a violent eruption that tears the ground apart and launches the battlefield skyward. In the chaos, flying debris smashes into Cars and knocks him off the planet's pole. Joseph distracts him just long enough for space to do the rest. Monkey D. Luffy, also known as Straw Hat Luffy, is the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates and the main character of One Piece. From a young age, he was inspired by Shanks, who saved his life and gave him the iconic straw hat. Luffy's dream is to find the treasure One Piece and become the Pirate King. What makes him special is his devil fruit, the Gum Gum fruit, which turned his body into rubber. This rubber body gives him resistance against blunt attacks and total immunity to electricity. Over time, he developed powerful fighting styles called gears, like Gear 2nd for speed, Gear 3rd for massive power, and Gear 4th for overwhelming strength. Later, he awakened the true form of his fruit, unlocking Gear 5, which connects him to the sun god Nika. One of his most famous battles was against Enel, the self-proclaimed god of Skypia. Enel had eaten the Rumble fruit, which gave him the ability to become and control lightning. To almost everyone, his power was unbeatable. He could fry armies with bolts of lightning, restart his own heart after being struck down, and move at the speed of electricity. On top of that, he used mantra, observation haki, to predict enemy movements. He built a flying arc called Maxim, and planned to wipe out all of Skypia with his giant lightning attack, Rego. After that, he planned to go to the moon, Fairy Verth. When Luffy clashed with him, Enel was shocked to discover that Luffy's rubber body made him immune to lightning. Attacks that would instantly kill others did nothing to Luffy, and this completely threw Enel off. Even so, Enel didn't give up. He turned his staff into a trident, fought with high-speed strikes, and unleashed massive lightning storms to destroy everything around him. He even transformed into his ultimate form, Amaru, where he surrounded himself with 200 million volts of electricity. Despite all of this, Luffy kept coming back, refusing to let Skypia be destroyed. At one point, Enel trapped Luffy's arm in a giant ball of gold and tried to throw him off the arc, but Luffy turned the situation around. He used the heavy golden ball as a weapon, climbing back up and smashing through Enel's attacks. In the final exchange, Enel summoned a giant thundercloud to obliterate the island, but Luffy jumped straight into it and absorbed the electricity with the golden ball. With Enel weakened, Luffy delivered a crushing blow, slamming him into the golden bell of Shandora. Guts is one of the most battle-hardened characters in Berserk. From childhood, his life has been nothing but survival through war, abuse, and betrayal. He grew up swinging massive swords larger than himself, eventually gaining a reputation as the 100 Manslayer after cutting down an entire army alone. Over time, he became infamous for hunting down apostles and wielding the massive Dragon Slayer sword, a weapon so heavy and brutal that it could kill both humans and supernatural beings. Guts later obtained the Berserker armor, which amplified his strength and let him keep fighting past the point where his body should break, though it came at the cost of losing control of his mind. Despite being scarred, missing an eye and an arm, Guts pushes forward, fueled by raw determination and his will to protect Casca and his companions. One of his most dangerous battles came against the Sea God, a massive ancient creature that had been sealed away on a remote island by Meros long ago. After the world transformation, the Sea God broke free and began devouring entire villages, ships, and pirates, turning its victims into tentacle-like extensions of itself. It wasn't just a giant monster, it had a heartbeat that produced powerful sound waves that disoriented enemies and nearly killed Guts even while he wore the Berserker armor. Its body was filled with countless parasitic creatures acting like living defenses, and its sheer size made it seem unstoppable. The fight started when Guts and his crew landed on the island to repair their ship, only to find that nearly all the inhabitants had already been assimilated into the Sea God. When its tentacles attacked, Guts put on the Berserker armor and went on a rampage, cutting through swarms of monstrous extensions and forcing his way inside the creature's body. Inside the Sea God, Guts faced a nightmare environment. The stomach was filled with parasitic isopods, spider-like god-like beings and half-digested ships. He hacked his way upward until he reached the stomach lining and managed to break into the upper body. From there, he was pulled toward the sea god's massive heart, a grotesque core covered with multiple eyes and guarded by swarms of creatures. Every time Guts tried to strike, the thunderous heartbeat left him dizzy and nearly unconscious. His senses went numb, and for a moment he was on the edge of collapse. Outside, his allies fought to hold off the tentacles while Meros appeared and began singing, a song that weakened the sea god's heartbeat and gave Guts a chance to push forward. Guided by Shirka's luminous form, Guts forced himself back up, raised the Dragon Slayer, and with one massive swing, drove it deep into the sea god's heart. The blow was enough to kill the so-called god from the inside. Blood gushed out, flooding its own body, and Guts was nearly drowned in the process. Just as he was about to fade, the childlike luminous being that often appeared to him guided him toward an opening. Meros then carried his body back to the surface, saving his life. Light Yagami is the central figure in Death Note, a young genius who discovers a supernatural notebook that allows him to kill anyone by writing their name. With his intelligence, charisma, and sense of justice twisted by hubris, he takes on the role of Kira, aiming to cleanse the world of criminals and reshape society under his rule as a godlike figure. At first, Light appears as a hard-working, respected student admired by peers and family, but once he starts using the Death Note, his morality changes. He becomes ruthless, manipulative, and willing to sacrifice anyone, friends, enemies, or innocents, if it helps him build his new world. The real turning point for Light's clash with the Shinigami Rem comes when he meets Misa Amane, the second Kira. Misa possesses her own Death Note and the Shinigami eyes, and she's deeply devoted to Light, but her guardian Rem is a problem. Unlike Ryuk, who watches from the sidelines, Rem is protective of Misa and openly hostile toward Light. She warns him that if he ever harms Misa, she will kill him on the spot. For someone as calculating as Light, this is a massive threat. He can't fully control Misa while Rem is watching, and if Misa were ever caught, Rem could expose him. Light doesn't fight Rem head-on with brute force. Instead, he uses strategy. When El closes in on Misa as the second Kira, Light manipulates the situation so that Rem feels cornered. He convinces Rem that the only way to protect Misa is to eliminate El. Rem understands that Shinigami can die if they extend a human's life out of love, but despite knowing the risk, she chooses to act for Misa's sake. Rem writes El and Watari's names in her Death Note, killing them instantly. Just as Light planned, Rem's death follows immediately after, since saving Misa went against the Shinigami's natural order. By doing this, Light managed to remove both his biggest human rival, El, and his biggest supernatural threat, Rem, in one move. Natsu Dragneel is one of Fairy Tail's most fearless fighters, known as the Salamander. He's a dragon slayer who was raised by Igneel, the Fire Dragon King, and his whole fighting style revolves around fire. Natsu is reckless, hot-headed, and always ready to throw himself into a fight if it means protecting his guild. He's not just a normal human either. He's actually Aetherius Natsu Dragneel, the most powerful demon created by Zeref. Because of that, Natsu has both demonic power and Dragon Slayer magic, which makes him strong enough to take on enemies that most people would call gods. Over time, he's learned to combine different flames like lightning flames, hellfire, and even Igneel's dragon fire, pushing his power to insane levels. One of his toughest battles came against Ikusatsunagi, a godlike machine worshipped as a deity of destruction. This massive war god wasn't just powerful because of its size, it was treated as an unstoppable weapon of the people of Giltina, and it was feared like an actual divine being. The machine had destructive power on a scale that could wipe out entire areas with a single attack. When Natsu and Fairy Tail faced it, they weren't just up against a normal opponent. They were fighting something seen as a god of war. The fight was brutal from the start. Ikusatsunagi's sheer size and destructive force made every move dangerous. Natsu's flames were pushed to their limit as he went head-to-head with attacks that could crush mountains. But what makes Natsu different is his ability to keep fighting no matter what. His fire grows stronger the more determined he gets, and in this battle, he had everyone's voices behind him. That bond with his guild fueled his strength and kept him standing even when things looked impossible. To bring Ikusatsunagi down, Natsu tapped into his most devastating firepower. He combined his Dragon Slayer magic with the deep emotional strength that always pushes him past his limits. Using his fire, he unleashed overwhelming attacks that tore through the god's body. In the end, Natsu overwhelmed Ikusatsunagi and destroyed it completely, proving once again that even a so-called god of war wasn't enough to stop him. Izuku Midoriya. At first, Izuku Midoriya was a quirkless kid who dreamed of becoming a hero like All Might. Despite not having powers, his bravery and obsession with studying heroes heroes caught All Might's attention, and he inherited One for All, a stockpile of power that grows stronger with each generation. Izuku started off breaking his own bones every time he used it, but little by little he learned to control that power, adding his own fighting style like shoot style and full cowl. By the time of the Shie Hasaikai raid, Izuku had already grown into someone capable of standing on the front lines against villains that even pro heroes struggled with. The biggest challenge came when he faced Chisaki, also known as Overhaul. Chisaki was the boss of the Shie Hasaikai and had one of the scariest quirks in the series. With Overhaul, he could disassemble and reassemble anything he touched, whether it was the ground, his enemies, or even himself. This made him almost untouchable in battle. When cornered, he fused with his men to gain monstrous new forms, and when he merged with Nemoto and then Rikiya Katsukame, he became a giant godlike monster towering over the battlefield. His power wasn't just destructive, it was overwhelming, reshaping the entire area and healing himself instantly from nearly any attack. During this fight, Izuku wasn't alone. He had Eri, the young girl whose rewind quirk let her revert someone's body back to a previous state. Normally, Izuku couldn't use One for All at 100% without destroying his own body, but with Eri's power constantly repairing his injuries, he was finally able to fight at full power with no limits. For the first time, Deku could unleash the true strength of One for All, and the difference was massive. Chisaki unleashed destruction across the battlefield, twisting the ground and attacking with monstrous limbs, but Deku blitzed him at speeds too fast for the eye to follow. Every punch carried 100% of One for All's power, overwhelming Chisaki's regeneration. The fight escalated into the air, with Chisaki trying to crush Izuku using his giant fused body, but Deku refused to let him win, not just for himself, but for Eri, who had suffered under Chisaki's experiments. In a final rush, he shot into the sky, dodging Chisaki's last attacks, and slammed him with a finishing blow that completely destroyed his monstrous form. Asta is the loud and determined hero of Black Clover. Born without magic in a world where nearly everyone relies on it, he grew up being looked down on by others. Instead of giving up, Asta trained his body endlessly and gained strength that rivaled those who used powerful spells. His life changed when he received a 5-leaf clover grimoire that held a devil named Liba, giving him the ability to use anti-magic energy that cancels out any kind of magic. With his swords like the Demon Slayer and Demon Dweller, Asta carved his path as a magic knight of the Black Bulls, aiming for his dream of becoming Wizard King. Over time, he formed a bond with Liba and learned to use Devil Union, letting him tap into devastating anti-magic powers. Lucifero, on the other hand, was the king of devils and one of the most terrifying beings from the underworld. He had overwhelming gravity magic that could crush opponents instantly, and his raw physical strength made him unstoppable even without relying on spells. Lucifero could easily overpower multiple magic knight captains at once, tossing them aside like they were nothing. His mere presence warped the battlefield, and even the strongest fighters struggled to land a hit. To humanity, Lucifero wasn't just a devil, he was like a god of destruction. When Lucifero manifested into the living world, the fight pushed everyone to their limit. Magic knight captains attacked together, but they were crushed under his gravity. Even Yuno with his immense spirit dive power couldn't finish him. That's when Asta stepped up with Liba. Using Devil Union, Asta's anti-magic cut through Lucifero's spells and even his near indestructible body. The battle was brutal, with Asta barely holding on against the overwhelming force of Lucifero's gravity and monstrous strength. Every second counted because his union form had a time limit, and if it ran out, the fight would be over. In the final moments, while his allies stalled Lucifero, Asta focused all his anti-magic into one strike. With his sword coated in the power to erase magic itself, he slashed straight through Lucifero's body. That single, perfectly timed blow ended the Devil King's rampage. Edward Elric, also known as the Full Metal Alchemist. After losing his arm and leg in a failed attempt to bring back his mother, Edward was fitted with automail and became the youngest state alchemist at the age of 12. Alongside his brother Alphonse, he searched for a way to restore their bodies, which led him into battles with homunculi, and even the being who created them, Father. Father was the root of everything the Elric brothers fought against. Born from the dwarf in the flask, he absorbed the power of God through the Gate of Truth and gained nearly limitless abilities. He created the homunculi as extensions of himself and planned to turn all of Amestris into a massive transmutation circle so he could consume millions of souls at once. By the final battle, Father had absorbed enough energy to rival a god. He could reshape reality, regenerate instantly, and overwhelm entire armies with sheer force. Even the combined strength of Mustang, Hohenheim, Scar, and others wasn't enough to take him down permanently. The fight between Edward and Father was the climax of the series. At first, Father's new godlike form made him nearly unstoppable. He unleashed massive blasts, crushed enemies with raw energy, and regenerated every wound. The heroes weakened him by forcing him to use up the energy he had stolen from the Philosopher's Stone, and Hohenheim's counterplan made sure that Father's power kept draining away. Even then, Father fought viciously, determined not to lose what he had taken from God. The turning point came when Father tried to kill Edward after trapping his arm. At that moment, Alphonse sacrificed his own soul to restore Edward's real arm, giving Ed the strength he needed to fight back. With his natural arm returned, Edward unleashed a relentless counterattack. He used his combat alchemy to smash through Father's defenses, adapting his techniques and pressing him without pause. The once godlike enemy, drained of energy and unable to regenerate, was overwhelmed by Edward's speed and determination. In the end, Edward landed the final blow that destroyed Father's vessel completely. Team 7 was one of the most iconic squads in Naruto, formed under Kakashi Hatake and made up of Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Haruno. Even though their bond was messy, and Sasuke left the team for years, their reunion during the 4th Shinobi World War set the stage for their greatest battle. That battle wasn't just against a normal enemy, it was against Kaguya Otsutsuki, the literal progenitor of chakra and the being worshipped as the rabbit goddess. Kaguya's backstory made her a terrifying opponent. Long ago, she ate the chakra fruit of the god tree, gaining godlike powers and bringing an end to human wars. But her obsession with control corrupted her, and she enslaved humanity in the infinite Tsukuyomi while creating an army of white Zetsu. Even her own sons, Hagoromo and Hamura, had to seal her away after she merged with the god tree to become the Ten Tails. Centuries later, Black Zetsu manipulated events to revive her through Madara Uchiha, and when she appeared, her power instantly dwarfed anything Team 7 had faced before. She could absorb chakra, shift dimensions at will, regenerate from almost any damage, and use deadly abilities like the all-killing ash bones that disintegrated anything they touched. When the fight began, Kaguya transported Team 7 into different dimensions, trying to split them apart. Naruto and Sasuke were forced to rely on the powers given to them by Hagoromo, while Kakashi and Obito provided support. Obito sacrificed himself to save Naruto and Sasuke, which pushed Kakashi to awaken a double Mangekyo Sharingan through Obito's spirit, allowing him to land devastating Kamui attacks that actually injured Kaguya. Naruto used his massive Shadow Clone Army and Tailed Beast Chakra to keep her busy, while Sasuke used his Rinnegan teleportation to try and corner her. When Kaguya tried to escape sealing, Sakura landed a punch right on her head and broke one of her horns, leaving her wide open. That gave Naruto and Sasuke the chance they needed. Together they pressed their seals against her, activating the 6 paths, Chibaku Tensei. Kaguya transformed back into the Ten Tails before being sealed away for good, while Black Zetsu was thrown into the new moon so he could never revive her again. If you like this video, turn on the notification bell and subscribe for more.